Welcome, I'm Igor Kule and this is the Eastern Europe Review, the program that shows you the main events from Belarus, Ukraine and Russia. This is a common project of Belsat TV and TVP World. And now let's take a look at today's headlines. The Lukashenka regime is repressing IT workers who have been donating to Belarusian civil funds.
Before, no one cared how valuable an employee you were and what you did at your job. In any case, a criminal case was opened and a person was sent to prison to serve his sentence.
Bakhmut is the most dangerous place on the planet right now as the Russian offense goes on. But some people refuse to evacuate from there.
Not considering evacuation. No, my mother is ill.
In Russian Siberia, many people go winter fishing just for keeping their families alive.
That's how we live. We can't live without fish.
Belarusian security forces are sending to IT companies lists of employees who allegedly donated money to help the repressed people after the 2020 presidential elections. In today's Belarus, the very fact that you donated to the repressed for political reasons is enough to end up in prison. But the regime has suddenly changed the rules of the game and offers IT workers to pay large fines instead, as they say, to avoid further problems.
Now, the Belarusian IT workers who remained inside the country seem to be able to pay off the court sentences for donations by the BISOL and ByHelp funds. During the COVID-19 pandemic, these funds helped doctors and hospitals, and after the 2020 presidential elections, supported the repressed. Soon, the regime recognized them as extremist organizations and began to detain people for bank transfers that had been sent to the fund's accounts. The media dev.by writes that the director of the high-tech park agreed with the authorities that high fines would be levied against the park's employees for supporting the repressed families, but the people could remain free. This has been confirmed by the founder of the BISOL Foundation, Andrei Strejak.
There is a list that the security forces have presented to the heads of companies of high-tech park. It actually exists. This list includes people, employees of these companies, who allegedly made donations to the funds. It should be emphasized that the donations were made through the fundraisers on Facebook, which means that the security forces don't have detailed information regarding which specific fundraising it concerns.
Andrei Strejak believes that the security forces included in their list anyone who donated anywhere in 2020-21. Alexei Lyavonchik from ByHelp also mentioned the safety of the databases of donations.
I exclude the leakage of information from the databases of the ByHelp company. If there had been a hole, our people in Belarus would already have been in prison for a long time. To this day, the main part of payments is made within the country. We can still deliver tens of thousands per week in cash to Belarus.
The people of Lukashenka send lists of employees to IT organizations who have to transfer the amount of their donations multiplied by 10 to a specific account. In this way, they can allegedly avoid further problems. If such rules of the game have really been changed for high-tech park, this is a new approach taken by the authorities.
Before, no one cared how valuable an employee you were and what you did at your job. In any case, a criminal case was opened and a person was sent to prison to serve his sentence.
The regime is possibly trying to preserve at least a small part of the IT industry in the country. Personnel and entire companies have been fleeing from the Belarusian high-tech park since 2020. Among them were the largest companies such as Panda Doc and Wargaming. They managed to leave before the last autumn when the regime banned almost 200 companies with foreign capital from reorganizing, going out of business, and generally disposing of shares without the permission of the authorities. The software developer EPAM didn't make it and was put on the list of unfriendly companies.
Specialists in the administration of the so-called leadership of Belarus are trying by all means to preserve the tax-paying base of Belarus, because companies with international capital are leaving, workers are moving out. But such measures are only temporary. It is impossible to stop it when everything is collapsing.
And this is what's happening. According to a Belsat source, at the beginning of 2020, 11,000 people worked in the Belarusian office of EPAM. Now, 4,500 people are left, and by the end of this year, they are planning to keep only 2,500 workers in Minsk.
Half actually have left, and it will obviously continue. All the companies I know have downsized their personnel or left the country altogether. This is mainly dictated by the exit of business or the exit of clients from Belarus who don't want to take the risk of working in Belarus.
This information comes from the manager of one of the high-tech companies which has recently relocated. According to his forecast, by the end of this year the park will decrease even more, by half of its current number of residents. According to the calculations of the Belarusi Rynek media, a fifth of 46 so-called pioneer companies, which were registered in High-Tech Park in 2018, have either already been liquidated or are undergoing bankruptcy proceedings. All these companies involve foreign capital. Maxim, an IT employee relocated to Lithuania, believes that certain processes can completely destroy the industry this year.
If, for example, a war starts and the borders get closed, that's it. This immediately means that the IT sector will close and all IT workers in Belarus will lose their jobs.
As of today, the founders of the Buy Help and Buy Soul foundations are strongly advising those high-tech park workers who have been invited to talk by the security forces to leave the country, because it can end not only with an offer to buy off with a fine.
Bloody battles for every centimeter of land and the struggle for survival while the temperature drops to 20 degrees below zero. Losses on both sides are hard to count. This is what the situation in the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut looks like. Risking his life, a Japanese volunteer helps the civilians left in the ruined city to cope with the situation. Watch our special report on how people are surviving and soldiers are fighting in one of the hottest spots of the Russian war against Ukraine.
This is what Bakhmut, a town on the hottest line of the entire Donbas front, looks like from afar. Bloody battles are continuing for any elevation and any convenient spot for defense.
They are like zombies. We've killed so many of them, and they were coming to get slaughtered again. They would just get up and walk. They stepped over their buddies' corpses and just walked.
Thousands of people continue to live in Bakhmut after the evacuation has been announced.
Not considering evacuation. Nah, my mother is ill.
Besides shelling, the second most important problem for these people is the cold. In the Donetsk region, it is now almost 20 degrees below zero. People are installing wood-burning stoves directly into their flats, like Pavel and his neighbors who got such a stove from the administration.
The pipes, will you install them in the basement? In the flat. I don't have a roof. I live in a 4-story house where the roof got blown up. In short, there is no heating, no water and no light. And the pipes, were they provided by volunteers? No, we requested them 10 days ago, so that's what they gave us. And we take the wood from forests, dry wood, and then we put the pipe through the window.
Other people congregate at points of unbreakability. These are essentially places of safety for collective survival. We are at the point of unbreakability that helps people get in touch with their relatives, take a break and have a hot tea and coffee. Sometimes we make lunches. We give out medicines free of charge. We provide first aid and other medical care as much as we can. About 600 people come to us a day. About 100, if not more, come here for medicines. And also to charge their phones, connect to the outside world and watch the news, or simply to get warm. The heat inside makes our camera's lenses fog up. We go outside and meet an unusual volunteer. Takao is a Japanese volunteer who only speaks his language. He does not understand any foreign languages.
I'm English. Ukraine.
Okay. He communicates using Google Translator and sign language, yet he is helping Ukrainian civilians here in the frontline city. He is helping. Yesterday he was making tea for people, throwing away the rubbish. He brings firewood. He is helpful to us. And what about the fact that he doesn't know the language? We find common ground somehow, with gestures. Here, we also meet volunteers who are purposefully engaged in rescuing animals abandoned during the war.
We rescue animals in an emergency as always. Here we help to evacuate animals and distribute animal food to the community. Have you evacuated anyone today? Yes, a woman who didn't want to evacuate without her cats. We collected her 5 cats and picked up 2 cats from the street. And at another address, we also picked up 2 cats.
Why? Because everyone saves people, and someone needs to save animals too. The battle for Bakhmut continues. Every day, military and civilians are dying here.
Winter ice fishing is gaining great popularity this year among Russians living in large cities of Siberia. Thousands of people are ready to sit for hours on frozen rivers in a 20-degree frost, waiting to catch a fish. Some people say that this is a way of meditation and an opportunity to get distracted from the horrible news about the war with Ukraine. But for most Siberians, fishing is becoming a way to feed their families, especially when the country faces an economic crisis, which is more and more evident.
Novosibirsk is the 3rd most populous city in Russia, with a population of 1 million. This is the city which is often called the capital of Siberia. Every weekend, hundreds of people come here, either by car or by public transport. This is a huge reservoir next to the hydroelectric power plant. All of these people hope to catch some fish. A resident of Novosibirsk, Dmitry Repiev, goes fishing regardless of the weather. Now in Siberia it is minus 30 degrees Celsius. But this does not scare most people. Dmitry has a snowmobile which he uses to travel on the ice away from the shore. He says that he is looking for silence and solitude with a fishing rod in his hands. This year, winter fishing is gaining more and more popularity. It helps many people here to take a break from the bad news and constant propaganda about the war with Ukraine. Most of them are doing it for the first time. Beginners go fishing where experienced fishermen have already been successful.
If people see that you have already caught a fish, they will definitely go and sit next to you. 1, 2, 3 people. Everyone is watching each other. Sometimes they can call friends and ask them to come where the fish are biting, although by human rules, you should probably look for your fish on your own. As in life, everyone must find his woman, his apartment, his job. No one is huddled together.
Ice fishing in Siberia was popular during the late Soviet Union and the beginning of Perestroika. The season lasts 6 months. At that time, thanks to fishing, it was possible to somehow feed the family when Soviet stores were just empty shelves. The fish was cooked at home, the surplus was sold at the market. Winter fishing experienced a revival in the early 2000s. Then it became a fashionable hobby, and what started to be important was the process itself, not the result. This is another large Siberian city, Omsk. People have also actively begun to go fishing here, but this is no longer a hobby. It is a vital economic necessity. People are forced to do it because of poverty, like in Soviet times. Andrei Bykov, a resident of the Omsk region, doesn't want to tell why he lost his income last year. Fishing is now a life necessity for him.
The need to feed. We feed our own animals and eat this fish ourselves. That's how we live. We can't live without fish. I try not to catch a lot. I'm old. I'll catch 2 buckets and that's enough. 4 buckets per week. 40 kilograms for a week is enough fish for me.
The main thing that Andrei is worried about is his old homemade all-terrain vehicle, especially during Siberian frosts. No one could come to the point where he drills holes in the ice without such equipment. Siberia is far from the territories where the Russian authorities unleashed the war with Ukraine. However, the economic consequences are beginning to affect the inhabitants across the country. Officially, the government reports that the poverty rate in the country has decreased in 2022. However, this happened in the course of payments to the military and their families, while ordinary citizens continue to get poorer. According to Bloomberg calculations, now the Russian Federation spends about 2/3 of its budget on defense, security, and social programs.
And that's it for today. Thank you for being with us. The Eastern Europe Review will be back next Sunday. Keep watching TVP World and stand with Ukraine.